Hey guys, Kevin here. Well, it's January 26th, and of course it's wintertime here in central New York. A lot of days where it's around zero or below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. And this winter we've been blessed. We haven't had a tremendous total volume of snow yet. We're under 8 foot at this point. But it comes and it goes, so we do have some periods when it melts, and certainly when you get large volumes of snow like we get, it really compresses as well, so it doesn't look like that much. So during this time of year, we're inside doing a lot of the work. So I thought I'd give you a brief update on some of the things we've been doing. So a lot of replanting of our citrus, our bananas, a lot of our starter plants that we started, the avocados and so on. Been working on those. We've moved some of our plants inside as well, some of our spinach and our lettuce, and they're growing as well. And we'll be doing some of our seed starting soon. I'm still going through and cleaning and sorting out all of our seeds from last season. So that's a huge project. We'll be making more ointments and salves. We made more of our laundry detergent. We'll probably be making more of our soaps as well, but we still got a pretty good stockpile from 2 years ago. And during the winter months, we're taking a lot of the food that's either been dehydrated previously or frozen, and we're going the oldest first, so we got stuff from 2012, 2013, and we're making our chilies and our various dishes, and we do it in bulk, put it in the freezer. But I wanted to talk to you, I wanted to mention one thing first, and it has to do with design considerations. I'm a homesteader, a permaculturist, and we're always thinking about how we're going to design aspects, whether it's our garden, whether it's the orientation of our buildings, whether it's our home to get the appropriate amount of solar gain. In this part of the country, incorporating thermal mass to reduce expenditure with on heating or cooling if you're in a different climate as well. And we take into account the wind direction, other factors that influence our property or the structures where they're located on our property. So we've always got easy access, we got abundance of water, even if the power goes out, so on and so forth. But there's aspects in permaculture that I think that aren't necessarily covered as thoroughly, and that's zone zero, inside of the home. And I don't know what you'd call inside of the body, zone -1 or whatever. But what got me interested in homesteading and permaculture was really about health and the design elements that we need to incorporate. So built this house over 30 years ago, and it's a really small kitchen. I don't know, I guess it's 12 by 12. And that's too small to meet all our needs as we recognize them today. And so I'll be expanding this kitchen in a couple of years' time, but through the process of us growing and developing new aspects that affect our health and well-being and our longevity, we need to consider those elements and when we redesign our kitchen or any aspect of what we're doing. So what made me think about this, with mentioning this, like before I've talked about the handicapped gardens that we put in, raised beds, self-watering system, home automation in our gardens, all of those sorts of things, because as the children grow up, they're not around to help out as much. You are there to do things by yourself if you don't have a large community, and so on and so forth, or you become differently abled as a result of some pathologic process or injury. But something that's happened is we've expanded our choices of food. We buy very little from the grocery stores, and it's all organic and non-GMO. And with a lot of the literature revealing the hazards of those two components and what it does to our microbiome, and those are the organisms within our digestive system, we're, for example, a person standing in front of you represents about 100 trillion cells. Only about 10 trillion are our cells, our own origin that came from that single cell that was created as an egg by your mom and your dad. And then through the developmental stages, you came out to be about 10 trillion cells. Well, the other 90 trillion cells are those microorganisms, excuse me, the microorganisms that have a symbiotic relationship with you. And hopefully most of those are mutualistic. Some are commensalistic, and some are parasitic. And unfortunately, with the advent or the introduction of genetically modified foods and the increased use of pesticides, we've modified the flora within our digestive systems, and we're creating pathologic processes where the cells are no longer tightly adhered to each other. The intercellular adhesion molecules don't bind together as well as they used to. And the normal protective layer of microorganisms that have a mutually beneficial relationship with us are becoming overwhelmed by those that are genetically modified. And we see that the microbes that live within our digestive system do become genetically modified and are injured as a result of the pesticides that are used. And I won't go into any more of that right now, but that prompted me to try and do as much what most people would call probiotics. And I wanted to enhance the number of healthy organisms that I'm ingesting all the time. So that meant doing activities such as fermenting. So over here in the corner, we've got our fermented vegetables. It started off as just doing like the sauerkraut with cabbages and all. This has cranberries in it, hot peppers, squash, all sorts of different vegetables from our gardens. Lots of carrots in there. And we have separate carrots because before they would go bad, we decided we'd ferment them. And all those microorganisms are going to help us with our health. And that seems like a really large, I think that's a 3-gallon container right here. And we'll break that up and we'll be freezing that because those microorganisms will still be viable and help to continually repopulate the microbiome within with friendly microorganisms. And the more friendly microorganisms that we can put into our system, not only do we have more potent antioxidants in there, and I'm not going to go into that because there's lots of things that are overstated about some of these cultures, but they are very beneficial if we get them into our digestive systems. And there's a whole variety of recipes that can be used using these fermented vegetables. So that's one thing we're doing. Another thing we're doing is, this is our sourdough bread starter here. And all the things that we use here, we use reverse osmosis water. We're very fortunate. I put in a reverse osmosis system years ago, and that removes all of the total dissolved solids, those things that can be potentially harmful. But I would suggest that you do use a water filtration system, especially if you're on municipal water, to do any of the things that I'm talking about. So here's some of our sourdough bread. It's all gluten-free because we don't use any of the gluten-containing grains. So what do we use instead? So we use things like amaranth and brown rice. So we have a small mill that we go ahead and we grind our amaranth and our brown rice and grind it into flour, and we feed our starter with that. And I use reverse osmosis water for that. So we keep that going. So that's one thing. So we've got our fermented vegetables, and we've got our sourdough starter, which we make our breads with. And we really are selective with our breads. For instance, in the morning, we have our sourdough bread with organic peanut butter on it, our own jams made from the fruits on our own property with reduced sugar load. And then we use turmeric, flaxseed. Inside of this bread there's sesame seed as well. So you can get really creative with some of the things that you're doing on your own homestead and really do things that are healthy for your body. We also use hemp seed on our bread in the morning and brewer's yeast for the B12. Another thing that we do that's it's a culture of microorganisms, and this is kombucha or kombucha. Kombucha, or however you say it. And it relies on a SCOBY, that thing that some people call a mushroom, but it's actually a SCOBY is a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. And they feed on non-fermented, either green, white, or black teas and sugar. So you brew your tea, and many people have seen to the grocery store these bottles, small bottles of kombucha that go anywhere from $2 to $5 a bottle, and they're very small bottles, and it can be very expensive switching over to that in order to get some of those beneficial microorganisms to populate your gastrointestinal tract. So we brew our own. So we brew a couple of gallons of tea twice a week. We add sugar to it when it's hot, after it cools down. Now that has more of an alkaline or more neutral pH, and the SCOBY requires the organism within our culture here requires a more acidic environment. So when we pour it in, we want to make sure that our SCOBY gets bathed with its own fluids as well, so we don't just take the SCOBY out and put it right in with the other tea. That'll promote mold and all growing. But this is really a wonderful tea. It's carbonated. Your kids should be drinking either this or kefir, which is another drink that we make. And that's another, they call them, now we drink water kefir, which there's crystals, they call them grains or crystals, that really have, it's another symbiotic relationship with living organisms, yeast and bacteria, that take water and sugar and break it down and populate the fluid with these organisms. And it converts that sugar, it consumes a lot of the sugar, and the SCOBY consumes a lot of the caffeine and sugar as well. So it can be pretty sweet if you don't let it ferment very long, or it can be more sour the longer that you let it brew. And certainly once you have your drinks, we just add some of the berries from our own property that we keep frozen: strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, blackberries, goji berries, sea buckthorns, whatever you want. So I just wanted to mention that, now here's a problem that I have. So I have the kombucha here, the sourdough starter here, and the fermented, and all of these are different microorganisms right next to each other, and they have to breathe. And so that's a bit of a concern. So in an ideal situation in your homestead, you want to separate these, and that goes back to the design. As we learn through the process, I learn about, geez, I need to have places to clean the initial soil off and to easily put the non-consumable parts of plants and put it so it goes into the compost pile or goes into the chicken feeding area. And then we need to have a wash station that's efficient as well. And then we need to have processing areas for each thing, and then we need to have good cooking areas. So as you're going through the process of learning about these things and discovering, geez, I like this or I don't like that, think about that in the design of your homestead. I think it might make things flow more easily and be much more enjoyable instead of hauling out the big, mixing unit or the big blending unit or whatever it may be, and taking up space. Right now we at least have a corner here that I can put these live cultures in, but it would be best if they were all separated at least by some distance, if not with the walls separating them as well. So those are things that I'm thinking about when we're going to ultimately redesign our kitchen in the future. And certainly larger, the double basin sink doesn't work for us here. You know, we're building an outdoor kitchen area as well, because we really are dead serious about the homesteading and permaculture. We really rely on our own land and our own resources here for the majority of our resources. So that's a bit of an update on how things are going, and I just wanted to let you know. I know during the summertime the videos are usually showing much of the construction and some of the bees. I didn't get to show you too much of the garden this last year, which is really where a lot of activities going on, but I hope to do that in the future. So that's it for today. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day. Bye-bye now.